We are now introducing ourselves through the chat box. Can you find the chat box below? So I'll go through one by one and continue to type what is that one action you're demonstrating. So thank you, Anita. Anita, you have chosen, did you choose adaptability? Which is quite close to agile as well. Karl LaRowe says practicing self-compassion. Sarah Lee Alcaraz, positivity. Dr. Min Hin from Myanmar. Eric de Graaf.
I have typed in.
Yes, what are you practicing? What is the leadership action that you're practicing right now? Inspiring leadership? Oh, okay. Eric Graaf, thank you. Eric Graaf is inspiring leadership. Lorena Wong, accepting change and recognize the opportunities. Kathleen Ong, innovate. Thank you very much. And Peter Elite, good morning from Washington, D.C. You are delivering end-of-life care to person COVID. Very noble. Welcome. Sonic Keen, innovation to prepare for the new phase. We are expecting participants from about almost 30 countries. So we have 4 more minutes before we begin. And when we begin, everybody will be muted and our videos will be off, except the people who are speaking. Vijaya Kumar, you managed to deliver for projects. Maher from Lebanon, welcome. Initiation and development. Wilson Chia, caring for others. Hannah, the change. And Maher, showing confidence. Oh, Jitesh, he's working towards the emotional well-being of my team, consisting of 300 plus and ensuring their family is taken care of. Thank you, Jitesh. Dan Perez from Central Bank of the Philippines, could you please share what is that one resilient leadership action that you are demonstrating now? Haji Janaidi, operational strategic. I hope I managed to mention everything. I'm struggling with the chat box. I'm also new to technology like most of you. Hello, Muhammad Saleh from Qatar. Hello, Mustaf. You're right on time. Okay, I see that Professor Irving Huang from Taiwan is in. Hello, Irving. Irving is here.
Yes, Irving is here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Many of us are new to WebEx by Cisco. We are more used to using Zoom. We adapt as we go along because we wanted to be inclusive for people in Taiwan. Hello, Haji.
Yeah.
Andrew from Accra has also just joined. My clock tells me it's 4 p.m. in Kuala Lumpur. We are about to begin. Dr. Atif, should we begin?
Dear colleagues, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa Ramadan Kareem. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you wherever you are. It is very great pleasure and honor to us to meet with all of you as ARTDO International family. You know that ARTDO is Asia Regional Training and Development Organization International. It's a global umbrella for international and national human resource development organization and institutions, as well as professional individuals like you. ARTDO, established in 1974, to bring tomorrow, today, with permanent secretariat in the Philippines and emeritus chairmanship and current presidency and international operation hub in Malaysia. As part of ARTDO International membership benefits, we will organize every month a webinar called ARTDO Conversation, tapping on the 47 ARTDO International Conference track. Because you know, the ARTDO International Conference, the 47, is supposed to be in September and postponed to December because of COVID-19. At that time, our theme is rejuvenating, reinventing resilience in the digital age. So while we are in the middle of the crisis, we will start by the track of resilience in order to awoke the resilient leadership in ourselves, based in our agility, integrity, as well as our flexibility. And as Professor Jigoro Kano, the founder of Judo, he said that don't be stiff till broken or floppy till squeezed, give way to conquer. So now we are giving way to conquer and adapt to the current situation because, in fact, we would like to meet you face to face. But now, with the help of technology, we were able to find people who registered are from 32 countries. I hope that all of them will join us while we are here. 50% of them are from Asia Pacific and 25% from the Arab region, 12.5% from Europe, 9.5% from Africa, and 3% from America. This is absolutely fantastic. This conversation, which will be interactive also with your contribution, it will be 1 hour, will be started by a presentation from two reputable figures. Later on, they will be introduced by my colleague Rita Go, the current president of ARTDO International. But between the two beautiful figures, we will have also an extraordinary break where a fantastic lady called Lorena Wong will give some exercises. And we hope that while you are watching and also in the break, if you have any question, please write it in the chat box because this question can help a lot in the conversations that will take place. So please enjoy the conversation. And I would like also to convey to you the greeting of the Chairman Emeritus, Dr. Thomas Chi, as well as our Secretary, Bernardo Oble. Rita, can you please take on?
Thank you so much, Dr. Atif, CEO of ARTDO International. The second speaker, Dato Said Mohib, had to be hospitalized yesterday. So as such, being agile, we had to very, very quickly come up with another solution. So gratefully, and Karl LaRowe wonderfully agreed to step in at the last minute, therefore preventing a crisis and preventing us from postponing this event. So like Dr. Atif said, this pandemic is a very, very terrible thing. But one positive thing that has emerged is it has allowed us, through technology, to come together as a collective community. We are now 32 countries in this virtual room. We ask for your forgiveness if we make any mistakes. We are new to WebEx. We are also new to online conversations. Please give us feedback later. And I have now this bowl. This is the reminder to the speaker. If the speaker has 5 minutes left, then the bowl will sound once. And when time is over, it will sound 3 times. Right? Okay. So, without much ado, allow me to introduce Mr. Eric de Graaf, whom most of you would have heard in the ARTDO Taiwan in Taipei. And then again last year, you have met him. He was the keynote speaker in ARTDO Sri Lanka. So he is going to be speaker also for the 47th ARTDO International Conference, Rejuvenating, Reinventing, and Resilience. We love the R word so much because it means we can begin again. So Eric de Graaf is currently director of the central government of the Netherlands. He is a practitioner of wide experience. For the past 5 years, he's member of the government of the what board of HRM directors with leadership and talent management as his special expertise. At this moment, he holds the position of Director of Governance and Innovation of the Ministry of Defense. The topics close to his heart are leadership, social innovation, cultural change, and I also understand he utilizes the power of coaching in government. He has very, very broad experience in the Dutch government, and he is also wrote a book on his mission and becoming a civil servant. He's been a program manager, expertise in information technology, control, security authority. So he is a most appropriate person to lead us because in his work in the Ministry of Defense, they put him through a lot of rigorous tests. They put them under pressure, deprive them of a lot of basic needs, and then very suddenly they stimulate a crisis. And if that leader survives, then only is he allowed to be promoted in the Ministry of Defense. That I've learned from my contacts in the Ministry of Defense. So Mr. Eric is no ordinary mortal, having passed the test. So without much ado, Eric de Graaf.
Thank you. I go on with my presentation. Of course, we have COVID coronavirus, and I will use this as a case to build my presentation on. And of course, you know this is a military word, FUCA. It has to do with the uncertainty, the complexity, the ambiguous situation, and the volatile situation, which we experience now. And it is a wicked problem because there's no simple solution. Also, solution can be part of the problems again. For instance, the balance between the economy, which is now not so much collapsing, but it is a problem. So we have to deal with all these different problems and solutions and do something. And when it's so complex, we call this wicked problems. Because of the uncertainty, the elusiveness, the unknowable of in this case the virus, and the unpredictability of how to tackle this problem. And of course, we want simple answers. That is not good. It is a complex one. So we have to do and ask for great leaders, strong leaders, who give clear direction and simple solutions and explanations. But that's not so easy. Learning more about power and leadership, you have, of course, and I guess you know that, certain parts in your brain which developed from many years ago. And one of the most basic is the reptilian brain, which controls us for a bigger part in our lives, because it has all these reflexes like fight, flight, freeze, and all these things, and it governs us. So that's one of the more important parts of our brain. And of course, we think we're rational creatures with logic and so. But in the end, we have to, when we want to know ourselves, we have to learn how our brains work. And power is part of leadership. Mostly it is as a negative connotation. One famous sentence: power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But power is also, of course, a force of good. This is a sort of test. It's like a joke. But not. This is a test for how much narcissistic are you. Do you have your own name on the building? Do you have your own jet? Do people always agree with you? Well, if you all answer these with yes, then, well, I guess you're a narcissist. And, well, we see that in big leaders with many simple solutions. And I use a Dutch cartoon from the Titanic. And if Donald Trump was captain of the Titanic, He first would say there is no iceberg and we won't hit an iceberg. And after it hit, I knew it was an iceberg, and so on. Of course, it's a joke, but in the essence, there are some facts and truth in this also. Leaders reveal themselves in times of plague, and we can look at the Greek tragedies, as we have in all cultures. We have stories, and in this Greek tragedy, the person who got hit by a plague sometimes make it worse, especially if there are narcissist leaders. And one of these plays is Oedipus Rex from Sophocles, and it's a study in political leadership. And the play explores the relationship between good governance and humility, a word which isn't used very much in leadership, but in my opinion, and also the old Greeks, humility is basic for empathy, empathizing with the people you lead. And one of the things you see also in this crisis is the grief cycle. And you know this maybe from mourning when somebody dies in your family or friends. You have this first emotion of shock and denial. And you see it also in this crisis, also by big leaders. They denied what happened. It's just a little flu. Then there's anger, frustration, because you lose your job or something like that. You go to a depression, and I see it by some people in my relatives, and because they get overwhelmed, and then you go to a better point where you get out of your depression and return to a meaningful life. And the interesting thing is, and I almost thought that Rita has foresight by the themes from the next ARTDO. You can plot resilience, reinventing, and rejuvenation also in this grief cycle. We recognize these words, I guess. And if you talk about resilience, there are some theories about resilience and how to deal with it and how to react to it and which things are more important. Because of the time, I won't go into detail. And also in communication, you see the same steps which you saw on the grief cycle, the denial, the disbelief, and the way you communicate and can handle communication when you are in such a phase in the grief cycle, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and the acceptance. Of course, communication is very important as a leader. I won't go to this in detail because I'm not from a company, but McKinsey has done research also for companies how to deal with such a crisis as we are having now. Also, again, you see resolve, resilience, return, reimagination, and reform. Different phases, but that's the way they describe this. Of course, Rita mentioned I used to be a military man before I became a civil servant, and many a man tries to learn from the expertise, the competencies of military soldiers, like Simon Sinek did. And we in Holland have an expertise center for leadership. And the phrase we use to develop soldiers and officers is be, do, and learn. And I'll explain that later on. And we use a compass to explain people which we have to train what things are important in leadership. And you see here the different roles a leader must have. He must be a professional, a manager, a coach, and a leader. The professional has an organization focus. He knows the organization, he knows his job, he knows how to do the things. The manager, we all know, is more planning and control and result driven. He creates the preconditions, he asks for budgets, he has to work with HR and so on. That's more the managerial role. And the role of coach is, of course, developing others and is more people-oriented. And at last, you have the leader role, which concerns more the vision and the decisions you make as a leader. These four roles are all part of military leaders. This do, be, and learn. You got to be responsible. You have to have a will to serve. You have to be honest, and you have to be courageous as a military leader. The last one, after be and do, is learn. And most important, you have to learn about yourself. And you know, although the iceberg, where you have your personality, your drives, your opinions, your knowledge in you, and what people see is, of course, the upper part, what you do and what you say. So lead yourself is very important as a military leader, and that's why we practice a lot and train and test by wargaming and planning on different scenarios. One saying is that no campaign plan survives first contact with the enemy. And von Clausewitz is a German military man. But also they say that Eisenhower has said the same. And also Sun Tzu has said, so many people, I guess, have said this truth, that the plan is not enough. You always have to react on the things which go along. And one of the wisdoms we use in military training is the ORDO loop from Colonel John Boyd, and that is that you observe, orient, decide, and act, and you go on and on. And it's very simple. It goes on, and that's the way you deal with the chaos and uncertainties you have to tackle in your mission. And we see it here in more detail. Because of the time, I'll go on. But here you see again the observations. You have the orient phase, decision, act, and feedback, and go on. So detect, create situational awareness is important. Sense and meaning making, and I'm saying this because it's not only for military men, but also for leaders. Making sense and meaning is very important when you communicate to your people, and it helps if you have authority by this. And at last, you have to account for and report at the end of your mission. So this ORDO loop is, you see in most forces all over the world, how to tackle and deal with chaos and go on. I mentioned learning. You have to evaluate the crisis and see what happens. And what are the pitfalls? You see a lot when we try to learn is that we do cherry picking the data. So we take only the things which we can use and we ignore the rest of the data. False security. Data with positive test, for example, is just a part, but it seems so hard because it's a figure. So it gives you false security. Also comparing apples with pears. Examples are COVID in Italy is different because, for example, elderly people living with families in one house and the virus spreads more and more. And for example, in Sweden, there's not so much people in a big land, so the situation is different. You are comparing apples with pears. You have to see what your context is. And don't only use the simple causal relation, because you have to look in history also at the context. For example, in Holland, we had with a virus some years ago. We have bought many vaccines for millions of euros, and we didn't use them, and the government got very much critics. So is that a reason why they don't react that fast with this crisis? So you have to see it in context and not only the simple causal relation. So what we see in Holland in the focus is from controlling as a manager to inspiring as a leader. Not yelling at people, it sometimes happens, of course, in the military, but from telling to listening, and from convincing others to asking what is needed. So we have to shift in the way we are leaders. And what is very nice is that Dan Pink, a researcher, he studied what motivates people, and that's important when you're a leader, of course. And the first one is the mastery. So that looks like the professional who knows his job. The second one is focus, which the leader should provide. And the third one is autonomy. So rather coaching by doing that people can find out how to do their job if they know what and why. The how is for themselves because they are professionals. These 3 points Dan Pink found out are important when you're leading people. So we use this in our civil servants top management group, and most things you recognize because we had them in Taipei. The important components of public leadership, integrity and cooperation, we saw in a lot of countries the same. But in Holland, it was the reflection. We are one of the countries we use and found reflection very important on your own behavior as a manager or leader, but also in your organization. How do you relate to the people in your country? Reflect on that. So that's an important part for leadership. I'll go on a bit fast, but some things are very simple. You know, the task relation, change, leadership. And you see now with this crisis that we are reacting. There's a sense of urgency. We believe in facts and figures, in solving problems. That's now important. But there are also the classic ways how to do and change an organization, or for that matter, a country. But we move to other kinds of change philosophy, which is more proactive, a sense of belonging instead of a external urgency, and sense of excitement, the stories which matter, the beliefs we believe in, creating a movement instead of only solving problems, bringing change to life, and nourish initiatives, interaction patterns, and so on and so on. These are the new ways for changing an organization. And this was all researched by a Dutch professor, and he used this model of, on the one hand, below the result-driven leader, and on the other hand, the inspiring leader. And of course, the visionary leader, which gives results and inspires people to give results, is very the best way. But we recognize maybe the doers, the people who just do and not inspire so much other people. We see the dreamers who have nice stories but don't give results or don't inspire people to results. The diver is maybe the worst type of leader, because he will do not much and don't inspire people that much. And we saw in the dots all kinds of leaders in Holland, which are plotted here in this model. Looking at the differences between two sort of managers, we have the CEO who inspires, who is diplomatic, dominant, etc. You see it on the left-hand side, in relation to your normal group or department manager, who is more the team player, who is more sympathetic and modest. There are two different almost personalities you see in these different types of managers. And you know what sort of aspects are important for the person. I won't dwell on that. But what if it's crisis? What we're talking about leadership in crisis times. You see that for the CEO, he doesn't care so much for his employees or for innovation or renewal. And the department manager, and the CEO, for the department managers, they found the convincing and to be courageous and to be inspiring with confidence more important. So you see things change in times of crisis. For CEOs, it's a bit different. Less important is the long-term focus and the vision. And more important is to be communicative and to be convincing and at the same time courageous, calm, rational, and orderly. Those things change and are important. This Jaap van Muyen found out in his research. Also, we have to pay attention not only to the leader and, of course, the situation in which the context in which leadership takes place, but also about the followers. And there's less written and research about followers than leaders, of course, but it is important. And also that is researched. What kind of followers you have and how you can relate to them. So I'll go on.
Closing remarks?
Yeah, no, two closing remarks, sorry. Two sayings. One is from the US Marines, which is important for the leadership crisis. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. Very simple statement. And what I mentioned before, being an authentic leader, know thyself. That's also important. So I'll finish now with my presentation.
Yeah, many of you might have read The Heart of the Resilient Leader, which is by Deloitte on 16 March. And it says in one paragraph, in everything they do, leaders do in a crisis, they should focus on expressing empathy and compassion for the human side of the upheaval. So this stands out very much, and this brings me to our next speaker, who will then focus on the compassion, the self-compassion that the resilient leader needs to have. And to lead us for this, he was just told he's speaking just last night. So thank you for being adaptable and agile. Karl LaRowe, he is the author of You Are Good Enough, Embracing Who You Really Are. And very recently, he came out with the Your Emotional First Aid book, a self-care handbook for healthcare providers during the COVID crisis. And this picture was taken at the ARTDO Penang conference that many of you attended. Karl LaRowe has already addressed more than 20,000 people on mental health, positive energy, compassion fatigue in various continents. He is a mental health therapist, and his services are very much needed during a time like this. So take it away, Karl LaRowe, Self-Compassion and the Resilient Leader.
Thank you, Rita. Can you hear me okay? I'm assuming that my microphone is on, so I will continue. To make one comment first, your Emotional First Aid Handbook is a free ebook. It's free to anybody. I wrote it recently to help the nurses and doctors and healthcare professionals who are on the front line and experiencing compassion fatigue. It's something I'm very familiar with, having worked in an emergency room and having burned out. This handbook is free. It's on my website, compassionstrengths.com, under Emotional First Aid. It's free to download. So I just wanted to make that clear to anybody who wants this handbook. It actually describes about 8 different ways of providing self-care to help the professionals on the front line who are experiencing burnout. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let's define resilience. One of my favorite definitions comes from Fred Luthans, who is a researcher in positive psychology, and he defines resilience as the developable capacity to rebound or bounce back from adversity, and that it is arguably the most important positive resource to navigating a turbulent and stressful workplace. So as we are experiencing today, in the stress and the turbulence that we're experiencing every day, resilience really may be one of the most important qualities that we can develop. And it's good to know that resilience can indeed be developed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that, because I believe that developing self-compassion is one of the keys to developing resilience. And I actually learned this in my work when I burned out as a social worker in an emergency room. Developing resilience and the ability to deal more effectively with stress is highly dependent upon our relationship with ourselves. And resilience is the result of having a positive, caring relationship with yourself. And this is why self-compassion is so important. Let's go to the next slide. So let's bring resilience into the context of a leader. And this is a great definition from Forbes, as you well know, as a leader in business. And they define that a resilient leader is a person who sees failures as temporary setbacks they can recover from quickly. They maintain a positive attitude and a strong sense of opportunity during periods of turbulence. When faced with ambiguity, a resilient leader finds ways to move forward and avoids getting stuck. And I love this definition because one of the Chinese character for crisis is danger and opportunity. This is the Chinese character. In every danger, in every crisis, there is also an opportunity. And a resilient leader is a person who can see failures as a temporary setback, not as a reflection of themselves. And this is difficult for a lot of people because we tend to think that something happens because of my personal failure. A resilient leader doesn't personalize failure. They see it as a temporary setback. And as a result, they maintain a positive attitude and they're able to look for the opportunity in the challenge. But our capacity to do that has a lot to do with the kind of mood, our emotional, our emotional tone, and how we perceive ourselves and perceive the situation that we're dealing with. When we are compassionate and positive with ourselves, our minds are more open to solutions that we wouldn't otherwise see. So resilience and being able to develop solutions and see things in a more creative way has a great deal to do with how we treat ourselves. Okay, let's go to self-compassion is the heart of resilience. Self-compassion was studied by Dr. Kirsten Neff. She's a professor at one of the universities in Texas, and her website is selfcompassion.org. Highly recommend that you visit this website. There's a great deal of information, including all of her research on this website. She says this, and I think this is really important to hear. Instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself for various inadequacies or shortcomings, self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronted with personal failings. And what she's talking about isn't failing of my integrity or my personal sense of self. She's talking about failings that we all face when we don't get the results that we want. We made a wrong decision, or we didn't see something clearly enough, or we allowed something to happen. Resilient people don't see that as a personal failing. It's not because I'm a bad person or there's something inherently wrong with me. It's because I didn't have the knowledge, or I didn't have the experience, or the ability at that time to make the right decision. But it doesn't mean that who I am as a person is bad. And what we tend to do when we make some bad decisions or we get in over our heads is we can be extremely hard on ourselves. We can say all kinds of horrible things and think all kinds of terrible things about ourselves. And this actually results in what's called gratuitous negativity. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But it's one of the ways in which we sabotage ourselves. And so when I begin to get very angry and upset and I put myself down, that does nothing to help me find the solutions that I need to find. Instead, it keeps me trapped in a sort of a limited way of thinking. Because negative emotion and what's called mindlessness, or being trapped by categories, are highly associated. So there's been a great deal of research recently in self-compassion. I just mentioned Dr. Kirsten Neff, and she is the person leading that research. But self-compassion has also been the root, the cornerstone of many philosophies and religions throughout time. So it's a very old idea, it's a very old concept, but it's just recently been studied psychologically. A great deal of research now going on. How do self-compassionate people respond during times of crisis? And the recent research on the practice of self-compassion has shown that people who regularly practice self-compassion, and we're going to learn how to do this in just a minute, are less likely to be depressed, anxious, and stressed. As a result, they're more likely to be happy, resilient, and optimistic about the future. So the research that's going on is also very clear. Developing self-compassion is actually a strength. It's not a weakness. Self-compassion is actually a strength. And when we learn to develop that compassion and to practice it, we can develop a greater sense of inner strength. There are three basic elements of self-compassion. One is self-kindness versus self-judgment. Very often when we do something that we get disappointed in ourselves, or we're faced with a very difficult situation, or we feel like we're not up to the task, we tend to be very judgmental. And that self-judgment usually takes the form of a very angry inner voice that puts us down. It's what I was talking about as gratuitous negativity. And if you've ever paid attention to the voice in your head when you're really stressed out, or you're very challenged with something and you don't feel up to the task, we can be very judgmental with ourselves. Self-compassion is learning to replace that self-judgment with self-kindness. How we talk to ourselves in our own heads is very, very important to our performance. The next one is called connectedness versus isolation. And again, when we tend to be very angry and disappointed with ourselves, we tend to isolate. We tend to pull ourselves away from people. When we begin to develop more self-compassion, we honor the connectedness we have with each other, and we learn to develop solutions together. So self-compassion also strengthens our sense of connection with others, actually because it strengthens our own inner self-connection. All right, the next one finally is self-forgiveness versus self-blame. And again, this has a lot to do with self-judgment. When I'm judging myself harshly in a negative way, I tend to blame myself. And I've got an old saying that says, you can never build yourself up by knocking yourself down. And yet this is what we tend to do. And that blaming kind of antagonistic voice that we have inside of our heads can be very destructive to ourselves. It can also come out as blaming other people, because that's the other thing we tend to do. If I blame myself a great deal, I'm much more likely to blame someone else. So self-forgiveness is the capacity to look at myself and say, you know, I'm only human. I make mistakes. I don't know everything, and as a human being, I'm going to continue to make mistakes, but that's part of the learning process. And self-forgiveness actually helps us learn better in the future. So these are the three basic elements of self-compassion: self-kindness, connectedness with self and others, and self. Let's go to the last slide, and I'm going to describe a practice that you can do anytime, anywhere, and this is actually part of the handbook that I was talking about earlier. This is a practice that you can do at any time, and I highly recommend that we learn to practice self-compassion because we don't do it naturally. Most of us have grown up with very high self-expectations, often with a demanding parent who demanded a great deal of performance from us, and we've internalized that voice so that we can become our own worst self-critic. So practicing self-compassion is something that we can do to turn that around and to become our own best support. So here are the steps. Number one, notice when you are judgmental and self-blaming. This is that gratuitous negativity. And again, that's going to be when you're having those negative, angry thoughts inside your head. It's usually associated with feelings of pressure and stress or disappointment or anger. And that's when we start all of that blaming kind of negative talk inside of our head. So that's when it begins. When you notice that, you'll also notice tension in your body. And we're going to do something to help relieve that, because when we get into this self-blaming internal self-talk, we also become very stressed and tense in the body. So the next thing to do is to pause, breathe, and relax. And this is it's simple, but it's difficult. But it's also one of the most important things we can learn to do. Because when I get into this real self-blaming tirade, it can take off on its own, and it's very difficult to stop it. And I'm sure you've all experienced that. Once that negative self-talk gets going, it's very difficult to stop it. So the moment you notice it, pause, breathe, and relax. And I'm going to show you an exercise that you can do to help you do that. But this just gives you the chance to calm down physiologically, mentally, and emotionally. The thing to do is to discharge what's called energy residue. Energy residue is emotional energy that's taken root in the body. And in this case, it's particularly in our neck and shoulders, because everybody knows this is where we get tense and tight when we're stressed out. So I'm going to show you a way to discharge that energy. And we want to create a space of internal safety. We need to feel safe inside of ourselves. Finally, we're going to visualize feeding yourself with kindness, compassion, and forgiveness rather than all of this angry, blaming self-talk. Now, at the bottom there is a YouTube video that I have. If you want to copy that down, that is a video of my leading this in a seminar. So if you forget how to do this, you can always go to the YouTube channel and remind you how to do the practice. In fact, I have quite a number of videos on YouTube, and you're certainly, again, welcome to utilize any one of those. So let's do the self-compassion practice right now. So what I need to do is to have the camera come on to me, if we could, and take down the slides and see if the camera will focus on me. Now, I'm assuming, because I don't see it, but I'm assuming that the camera is now on me. What we want to do, again, when you begin to notice the tirade of angry, blaming, negative thoughts, such as, how could you, what's wrong with you, you stupid, you should have known, all of those kind of angry thoughts, we want to pause, breathe, and relax. So the moment you notice those things, just take a big, deep breath. And the way to breathe correctly in here is from the diaphragm. We tend to breathe from the chest. We need to learn to breathe from the diaphragm so that our stomachs expand as we breathe. We tend to hold our stomachs in and restrict our breath in the process, but we need to learn to let go of that and allow yourself to breathe fully. Pause, breathe, and relax. Now, the next step is to discharge the energy, the tension, and the tightness that gets all caught up here in the neck and shoulders. So what I want you to do now is to take a deep breath, and as you breathe in, pull your shoulders up to your ears as far as you can go. So we're going to take a deep breath to a count of 4. Pull the shoulders up, breathe in, deeper, deeper, deeper. So let's do the exercise again. Breathe deeply from your diaphragm. As you breathe in, pull the shoulders up, up, up. Rotate them back, extend your chest, and then go. All of the air out. In fact, push the air out. Now, if you're in a room with people, you don't want to make a noise. So you just do a silent all. Let's try that again. Big, deep breath in. Pull the shoulders up, up. Rotate them all the way back, and then as you're doing this, sense and feel all of that tension, all of that tightness come out with your breath. Just come out. And feel yourself begin to relax. Now the next step, on your stomach, okay? Put your left hand right on, hope you can see that, right around your belly button. Put your left hand there. And what I want you to do is continue with slow, even, deep breathing. So just breathe nice and deeply and slowly. Feel the warmth and the pressure of your hand on your stomach, and allow yourself to feel a sense of safety. Allow yourself to feel a sense of safety. Safety and security. In fact, you can even close your eyes and bring your attention inside. Feel the warmth and the pressure of your hand on your stomach. Sense and feel the safety and security of holding yourself right on your stomach. Just sense and feel that. See if you can create a sense of safety and security. Breathe and allow that feeling. Safety and security. If you have your eyes closed, open them up again, because I'm going to show you the next part. Continue with the hand on the stomach, the left hand on the stomach. Now put your right hand over your heart. Right over your heart. And in the same way, feel that sense of connection to your heart. Your hand is over your heart, and you can feel the warmth and the pressure of your hand on your heart. And imagine that you can give your heart a feeling of compassion, a feeling of passion, caring, appreciation. Just feel that. Sense yourself appreciating yourself, feeling a sense of compassion and care for yourself. It's far too often that we get so angry and upset with ourselves, and it's we never give ourselves the kind of care and compassion that we really need. So just for a couple of minutes, allow yourself to feel the safety and security in your stomach, and the sense of compassion and appreciation and forgiveness in your heart. Just allow that feeling to grow inside. And let that feeling go deep inside. Let it become a part of who you are. Okay, I think I'm probably using up my time. So this exercise, and again, I have it on the link that I gave you just a couple of minutes ago, and I'm sure Rita has it as well. Learn to practice self-compassion. It's one of the most important that we can do develop our resilience. The more compassion and care and kindness and forgiveness I give to myself, the more internal strength that I develop. This is where internal strength comes from. So practicing the self-compassion is very, very important in developing resilience. Hey, Rita, I think that's back to you.
Right. So thanks so much, Karl. And later we'll call you back because you've got many questions. You can rest for a while. And can we have Eric back? We're going to start the conversation with Eric. Eric, you have several questions. Eric, can you come back?
Hi, Rita.
Yeah, we're now going to start our conversation. Can I see you, Eric? Can you put on your video? Yes, yes. So you've got a question from John Gamel from Minya, Egypt. How do I get myself from being a doer leader to being an inspiring leader?
Well, I guess I've experienced the same attitude when I was younger. You grow up, and in your personality, you learn to do things, and it's not given to everybody that you are a leader by nature. So it's something which you can develop, of course, and there are lots of trainings and books written about this subject. And again, Simon Sinek has done some wonderful material on this issue. And I think the most important thing is that when you're leading professionals, you don't tell them how to do their work. You inspire them by giving the why. Why are we here? What is our focus? And try to hold back on taking action yourself. Mostly it's for a doer, it's because he's always in the action mode. He's used to do that. So you gotta give space. You gotta give the room for other people to step in and withhold yourself and just ask yourself, what do I ask from the other people, the employees? So give room and don't step in too easily, and make sure you got the why and the what clear for your group.
And we've got another question for you. It seemed to be coming from Egypt. Mr. Muhammad Fakir, I do think that resilience in itself is a learned to be skill that needs a lot of learning and a lot of mock practice in times of low risk, at least for those who lead in terms of real crisis, as well as a little awareness for followers. What do you think? Is resilience a learned skill and needs a lot of mock practice in times of low risk?
Yes, I totally agree with that, and that's what a Ministry of Defense of a force does. It practices a lot. So yes, you can develop it, and we train first the military men, the soldiers, as individuals, and then as teams, and then in bigger groups to deal with things they don't know which are coming, and we see and test them. How do you relate to chaos, to, for example, not enough information to make decisions? So we do lots of trainings and exercises to practice that and to develop it. So yes, it can be done.
So is it really the secret that the part about is it okay that I tell them what they do to them, or is still a big secret? Like you are deprived of the basic needs, right? Of Maslow's basic needs hierarchy. You don't have food, am I right? You don't have sleep, and for 5 whole days, right? Is that true?
That's normal. I guess in most armed forces, they do these things just to test and develop how to deal with these kind of situations, which could occur, of course, in certain missions. So yes, you're right.
Yeah. So then if they do not pass that practical test, something is entered in the database that they are not promotable to a leader. They cannot become a colonel or brigadier general if they failed that military test. Am I right?
Yes, in our forces, it's done earlier. So at the platoon level, they are tested with these kind of tests. And then you get an advice, maybe you should go in another area like human resource or logistics and not be an operational.
Yes, definitely cannot lead during crisis, right? So yeah, thank you so much, Eric. And now the balance of the questions are directed to Karl LaRowe. Karl LaRowe, could you come back? You have quite a number of questions. A very, very interesting
I
question.
think I'm back.
Yeah. Jitesh, I believe from India, is asking you, what's a way to forgive oneself? Without this, there's a huge baggage that keeps piling up and inducing negativity time and again. This is surely an impediment in growth prospect. How to forgive oneself?
That's a great question, and if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a millionaire by now. Actually, I will answer that. I've had to forgive myself in my own life. I made so many mistakes that I thought when I was working in an emergency room and not doing as good of a job that I thought I should be doing. Self-forgiveness really has to do with self-acceptance, and that's understanding that I am a human being. I am flawed. I have shortcomings. The expectation that I should be perfect all the time is an impossible expectation, and it's not one that we can hold on to and allow ourselves to be happy and joyful and compassionate at the same time. So what I begin to do is to place more importance on my relationship with myself rather than trying to be perfect. I just had to let go of this expectation that I should be what everybody else thinks I ought to be, and to allow myself to be who I am. And as I've been able to do that and have more caring compassion for who I really am, I've learned to forgive myself for the mistakes that I've made in my life.
Jitesh again is asking, isn't isolation a means to revive self? Sometimes I see this as necessary, without which we may fail to understand oneself.
All of that. Was the question, is isolation necessary to
revive
discover oneself?
Is it isolation necessary to revive oneself? Maybe rejuvenate.
Well, here's, you can isolate without removing yourself. In my meditation, I meditate every morning and every evening. In my own meditation, it's a sense of coming inside myself, being inside myself. I'm not removing myself from society or from other people or from the daily goings on of life, but I have a way to center myself. So in some ways it's a form of isolation, but it's not really isolating, but it does allow me to nurture myself and be inside myself and to give to myself the energy and the attention that I need to grow.
Okay, so we are a little bit over time now, so we will entertain one last question. Anyone want to ask the one last question? And you can also put on your video to ask the last question. Remember that Karl's book, The Emotional First Aid Handbook, is available. Reach out to us and we can send it to you. We can also send you that YouTube link. And I know that the time is up, and we now have one bonus activity. So if you've got appointments and you need to go, just now fill in the evaluation form, right? But we've now got one bonus activity for you. One of the participants, Lorena Wong, would like to do something special for you. And so if you can spare the next 5 or 6 minutes, then Lorena would like to now lead you into an exercise. We understand that many of you are now working from home, so we are on the computers like 24/7. So Lorena would like to lead you on some exercises. Allow me to tell you a little bit about Lorena. Lorena Wong is a marketing professional who lived or born in Guatemala City. She has a master's degree in social and economic development and will complete her master's degree in Buddhist philosophy. And in 2004, she organized Dalai Lama's visit to Guatemala. And 2005, she moved to Dharamsala, India to study Tibetan culture and philosophy. Later on, she moved to Barcelona, Spain, and started to work for Tibet House under the direction of Venerable Lama Thupten Wangchen. Now she lives in Amsterdam. She's an instructor and therapist of mindfulness. So without much ado, may I introduce to you Lorena Wong. Over to you. She's off. Oh, yeah, she's there. I can see her. Okay. Oh, yeah, somehow her video is not working. Yeah, hold on. Okay. So for those of you who have to go, you can just go ahead. She's trying to get back on. Okay, in the meantime, I have the message from one of the participants who wanted to share what she or he is doing to be a resilient leader. So, Retno, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Can you share with us what you're doing at your international school to be a resilient leader? I understand that you've had to teach your 2.5-year-olds.
Yes, it's been challenging anyway as a nursery teacher teaching 2.5. Even I have a student who's only 2 years old, and when this e-learning introduced, it was quite a chaotic because I am really not good with computer. And so the first 2 weeks was really a roller coaster for me because I had to learn everything, and some more it's very challenging to keep the children on focus for each lesson. But then I really pushed myself to learn these meetings with parents because parents have to be there as well. And then after 3 weeks, of course, I got better, and then I could make my own YouTube channel. I could basically, I felt like I'm a YouTube star because I started doing cooking lesson with the children, and I improved my ukulele. Playing with my ukulele, I started to learn more songs and entertain the children. And what is important is that some parents initially said that they're going to drop off, basically, or take the children out. But then I managed to get all the stay on, which is good for the school. So I don't know whether that is called a resilient leader, Rita.
Yes.
It's really good, yes.
Yes. So congratulations. You are a resilient leader, and you are leading wherever you are.
Thank you.
Lorena said that her computer crashed and she's trying to get back on. So basically, I will call the meeting to say the meeting is over with one closing remark to say that Brian Tracy shared that the true test of a leader comes at the moment of crisis. So I would encourage all of us to be a resilient leader, to get up once again, to rejuvenate, reinvent, and wish all of you well. And those of you who still want to have the exercise with Lorena for 5 minutes, she's trying to get back on. But if you would like to go and need to go on with your day, please carry on. And I'm now also going to invite Mr. Wilson Chia, can you also share with us what is your experience of a resilient leader? What actions did you take? Mr. Wilson Chia, are you there? Yes. Can you share with us, Mr. Wilson Chia? I heard that your organization also went through a very big crisis. And what were the actions you took as a leader?
Rita, okay. Anyway, thanks, Eric, for sharing on the leadership resilience, and also Karl for sharing very deep insight on the compassion. I think basically to me, I think there's no leadership manual for dealing in a crisis. Actually, there's no script to guide or what you need to do or you need to say to your team member. Now, everything comes from the heart and experience. Like example, our company was tested in many ways when the first COVID case was reported in Vietnam. And during the time that we have employees, our workers were so scared, they were so afraid, and especially so when during the lockdown of the pandemic, because Vietnam we lockdown was pretty early, that somewhere around February to end of March, and we are so concerned for our factory because we have almost 800 workers in our factory, and they were working non-stop because after the lockdown, we are allowed to produce because we are food production. Yeah, so we need to do non-stop because our demand for food has been increasing. Now, what I was he mentioned about danger and opportunity. Our company we saw it as a danger as a risk versus opportunity. I don't use the word danger. Now, our employees actually were worried about their health, the risk of being infected. Some of them just, during the sensitive period, some of them just refused to work. Well, of course, we as a board member, we understand the situation and we really sympathize. And we took the various action to minimize the risk during the period. We even installed, the spray disinfection, and we took the effort to address all the concerns from the workers. And we make sure that we don't avoid them. Now, importantly, we show them that we have compassion and care for their safety and the well-being. I do agree with Eric sharing earlier. Eric mentioned about crisis communication when bad news caused grief. Now, as our company, we keep communicating, we keep talking, we keep listening to the employees. Now, personally, even myself, I kept wide contact with the workers, the employees, uh, by my Facebook. I took the initiative. Actually, we took the initiative to contact, to ask them about their situation, about how's the work, about what's their health. And many of them, they reply, they send a message, they share about their work situation and the condition. Now, basically, for us as leaders, we need to keep our communication channel open and let them share their views. As what Eric has mentioned in his slide I saw, in leadership crisis, we need to adapt and overcome. That's all I wish to share, Rita.
Thank you. So communicate, innovate, adapt, and overcome. So with that, Lorena, thank you so much. Are you able to put on your video to lead us? There are many of us still waiting for you.
Wonderful webinar. I learning a lot. I'm really grateful. So now I know the time is very short, but it's normally in work is like that. So I just want to show you some brief exercise, 5 minutes, and we're going to work with this stress. Just this and practice self-compassion, taking care of ourselves for 5 minutes. Okay, so just follow me. Go all over the activity. Please do it with me. Go all the tension. Our neck. So there's a lot of tension here. And then just all down. Left. Right. Circles. Now to the other side. Now, here your face, here, both sides, you just massage and just feel so nice and release all that is accumulated. Nice. A little massage and on your shoulders. Now we're going to work in our meridians. This is to increase all the circulation. So we're going to feel. Now the other arm. The same. And it's important to touch on all. There is a lot of points here. Acupuncture just take away all the stress. So you have a headache, you do it massage here. You try again your legs. Again the same procedure. Massage your toes is very important. And your feet is this point at this. Now, just to finish, a lot of things in our going to and that we are very lucky. We have our beloved families, our leaders that are working hard, that are coming. So thanks to the universe and ourselves for taking this time. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lorena. Thank you, everybody. And let's ring our bell, Lorena. Ring our bell. We have the Tibetan bell. Means the meeting's over. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.